Yo, what's up guys? You got PokeaimMD here on the channel to champion what is clearly the undisputed greatest Pokemon of all time, Miltank. Anyone who's played Gold, Silver, or Crystal will of course know the horror of Whitney's unstoppable behemoth, unless you're one of those people who pretends like they didn't get crushed 17 times in a row by its ridiculous rollout. So, how good was Miltank actually? And in this video we'll be going over these competitive formats. In Gold, Silver, Crystal, Miltank was an incredible key Pokemon in its debut generation. It got some amazing moves that provide tremendous utility for stall teams. Its signature milk drink provides it with reliable recovery. It's one of the two Pokemon to viably use Heal Bell and OU. It can even spread paralysis for its teammates with Stab Body Slam. You may be thinking, well that sounds great, but how does it actually counter anything? GSC is a metagame rife with cursed Pokemon, including the king of the tier Snorlax, so it seemed like Miltank would quickly be overwhelmed. Well, the answer to that lies in the last move, and that is Growl. Well, PokeaimMD, you might say. That's the first move I get rid of on the rare occasion I choose Chikorita, and now you're telling me it's imperative to the use of Miltank? In turn, I would respond, yes, kind viewer, that is correct. Growl dropping the attack stats of Snorlax, Steelix, Rhydon, Heracross, basically anything with Curse except Machamp is crucial to halting their offensive assault and stalling them out, because as it turns out, Curse has 16 PP, and most of the attacks these cursors use range from 16 to 24. Meanwhile, Growl has 64 PP. 64! In a metagame where PP stall is often critical, this is an astounding number. Miltank's tendency for pairings with Starmie, who packed 32 PP Recover and 64 PP Rapid Spin, meant that its teams were prepared to go the distance. You may be thinking, well, Miltank's 16 Milk Drakes is a decent amount, but won't it run out quickly if it's taking too many hits? Therein, we find the beauty of Growl. The initial unboosted hit does not do so much damage to tank that it needs to heal, or else it won't be able to switch in again. And if the attackers want to stay in and brawl, each successive attack on tank grows weaker, so repeated hits aren't going to be bringing it down, and it can save its milk drinking for when it really needs it. Meanwhile, the opponent is wasting PP. As you may imagine, this meant Miltank fit best on stall teams that prefer to take the game slow, letting the opponent's offensive team wear themselves out, trying to break the incredibly tough opposing core. As a result of these teams' effectiveness and thus popularity, GSC gained the reputation it often has among newcomers, that it's all about stall. However, you cannot win without ever attacking, as it turned out. Miltank's Heal Bell was useful for enabling offense, specifically the mighty Belly Drum Snorlax, who can easily rest off the damage it do to itself to drum, and then be immediately woken up for another assault. These teams started running Marowak with rest in its fourth slot to do the exact same thing, and paired together, these behemoths would break the sturdiest team. Of course, Miltank can't do it all on its own. Being hit on the switch will still waste PP, but might force sticky situations where it's drinking too much milk and will soon not have any more, especially in the face of powerful unboosted attacks like Snorlax Double Edge or Heracross Megahorn. Tank won't have to immediately heal, but it'll definitely want some backup so it's not the sole defensive measure against these monsters. Luckily, it's usually backed up by a solid core on stall, with Starmie handling Machamp and Ridley in the field of spikes, as well as Skarmory looming behind it, handling Pokemon like Heracross that Tank didn't want to eat too many hits from, and Marowak and Belly Drum Snorlax, which Tank straight up could not stop thanks to Growl only dropping attack by 1. Skarmory having some overlapping defensive coverage, such as against non-Fire Blast Snorlax, allowed the stall team to go for a divide and conquer strategy, where the opponent could never open up the right hole to take advantage of. Now, these strategies weren't infallible, they were passive enough to allow the imposing player to take their time placing status and whatnot. Plus, things like mixed self-destruct Snorlax could open up some holes that sent the dominoes toppling quickly after. However, these were staple GSC teams for a reason. They were incredibly tough in the face of just about anything. An aspect of Miltank, not often seen yet potentially crucial, is, in addition to its great bulk, it possessed amazing speed for a defensive Pokemon, clocking in at a base 100, meaning it tied Zapdos. The only common Pokemon you see in any GSC game that outsped it were Gengar, Raikou, and Starmie. Speed on defensive Pokemon plays a larger role than one would expect at first, as it's not just enough to be bulky. For example, if Raikou was slower than Gengar, it would not be able to reflect in the face of explosion. In Miltank's case, it is the one true Nidoking counter that can outspeed it, which means it is not as prone to being ruined by a critical hit, since it can heal up before Nidoking can strike the finishing blow. Being fast is good in general, as even in bad matchups, Miltank can get off one last attack. For example, being able to wake up a resting Zapdos, lower attack with Growl, or even go for chip damage and potentially a body slam paralysis in the face of Machamp looking to cross chop. Its speed even allows it to check Jinx quite nicely. Now, Miltank has its drawbacks, no doubt about that. Heal Bell only having APP stands out among them. Over-reliance on it will leave one susceptible to just being repeatedly status. It also allows some really dangerous Pokemon to come in for free, such as Zapdos, Gengar, and Vaporeon, Pokemon that can quickly swing the tide of a game. The stacking of a Machamp weakness Miltank brings plagues most GSC teams is also notable, especially since Tank's team usually moves at a glacial pace, giving the Machamp user's offensive team plenty of time to blow up Starmie with Cloyster, who must switch in lest it concede free spikes, which would make things incredibly difficult. If one runs Zapdos alongside Starmie to compensate, they open themselves up to Thunder Assaults from opposing electric types, which leads some players to prefer Blissey, who can also support Marowak and Drumlax with Light Screen. Basically, Miltank's ability to enable its teammates does lend it to a certain passivity, which alongside its weakness can be exploited both in the team builder and in the battle, and the Miltank user must be aware of these shortcomings so as to be able to play around them. It's definitely not the most easy Pokemon to use, but what it does is unique and integral to the functioning of some of GSC's most notorious teams, as well as the identity of the tier itself. In Gen 3, sadly, Miltank fell off hard in the generational shift. It suffered greatly from needing to split EVs and struggled to check anything of note, especially with permanent Sandstorm and multiple layers of spikes, meaning that it burned through its 16 Milk Drink PP very quickly. Heracross gained Fighting Stab and Focus Punches flying around didn't help matters either, to say nothing of how badly it was mauled by Metagross. On the other hand, Blissey came into its own as one of the tier's best Pokemon. It was bulky enough to not need to constantly heal and fit on a wide variety of teams. Celebi had the same properties that can also run Heal Bell, thus Miltank's cleric ability was no longer so unique. Unfortunately, it was too good for UU. Its combination of speed and bulk was just terrific, and it was tremendously hard to bring down. This means it will languish in borderline forever, to be looked at by players trying to find some use for it, but ultimately concluding that it does not get used in OU for a reason. C'est la vie. In Generation 4, Miltank really couldn't keep up in OU now, what with the insane power creep of Infernape and Heatran and Dragons, oh my. This time though, it found itself not being too powerful for UU, alongside its speed being excellent for the tier and giving it in-battle flexibility to adapt to the opponent's team. It also got access to Stealth Rock, giving it even more utility. Picked up an excellent new ability in Scrappy. Even the ghost types of the tier, Mismagius, Rotom, and Spiritomb could not stop its body slam, allowing Tank to easily spread paralysis for the benefit of a slow teammate such as Rhyperior. It could also potentially sweep with Curse, given how nothing that ran fighting moves really wanted to switch in, which can let its stack boost until it was near unpenetrable. It wasn't as prominent in usage as the staples of the tier, but anyone who played UU knew how good it could be. However, this low usage did see Miltank drop to NU, and there it was excellent. While it had to be careful of Focus Blast, its speed, bulk, and thick fat let it check Charizard and Jinx, while being tough to take down for everything else, allowing it to Stealth Rock, Heal Bell, and spread paralysis against much of the tier. In Black and White, power creep meant that OU and UU were beyond Miltank's reach now, and it saw barely any action in RU either. In NU, it still faced competition, but was viable. When Jinx was around, Tank being able to check both it and Charizard, the best Pokemon in the tier, was most of its niche, as otherwise it struggled to compete with a plethora of other excellent normal types for the most part. Defensively, Audino and Licky performed better, while Zangoose and Kangaskhan were superior offensively. However, being able to Stealth Rock set it apart, and offensively with the new Sap Sipper as its ability, it can absorb grass hits of all kinds, which could be crucial when considering that this included things like Tangela and Leafeon, two premier NU physical walls who could actually let Miltank in and give it a boost. It was also useful to be immune to Sawsbuck Hornleech in addition to various assorted other stabs thrown around by Shiftry and Cacturn. It is unique in that it is one of the few Pokemon which can hurt Calm Mind Musharna or Nasty Plot Misdreavus at all, thanks to its powerful punishment, and its base 100 speed is 5 base points above NU's golden speed of 95, meaning that it also outspeeds and punishes the majority of offensive teams as well. Miltank wasn't that influential in NU and had minimal impact on the metagame, but it was usable and even a threat if one used it correctly. Miltank returned to NU once more in Generation 6, being nearly immovable by the tier's power standards, and as a result, being one of the few Pokemon able to stand up to huge threats like Tauros and Kangaskhan. With Rocky Helmet, it punished them for attacking and thus play offense while on defense, thus lowering its passivity and meaning it wouldn't do nothing but heal throughout the game. It did have to invest heavily on the physical side though, meaning it lacked the speed to threaten special attackers that attack its meager special defense, namely the powerful Magmortar and Samurott. Klinklang also posed a problem since it could substitute and shift gear freely. These are some notable issues to have. However, Tank did stop Lilligant hard thanks to Sap Sipper, and that alongside Tauros and Kangaskhan was a notable threat to be able to hold off so safely, reliably filling in huge defensive gaps in teams. Tank wasn't at the top of NU's usage charts, but it had a fine niche within the metagame. With so many Pokemon gaining Defog in Ultra Sun and Moon, Miltank became notable in NU for Milk Drink, giving it longevity throughout a game to set up Stealth Rock over and over. Thick Fat was also notable for letting it stand in the way of key metagame threats like Delphox, Sneasel, and Mega Glalie, as well as standing in the way of Incineroar's meaty Flare Blitz. It ran a more special defensive spread to handle Fox's Psychic, and this in turn allowed it to check other Pokemon like Guzzlord, Vikavolt, Comfey, and Alolan Executor. However, its biggest issue was Xatu, which completely stuffed any Stealth Rock attempts and was on quite a number of teams, meaning that a Pursuit Trapper like Sneasel was nearly required lest you wanted your Miltank to be a useless blob, unless you were insane enough to ignore the presence of one of the tier's top Pokemon. Even with this, Miltank was still fairly passive unless it was part of a bulkier ensemble focused on stacking hazards, which would somewhat make up for it, but still, this was niche enough to where Tank's usage just wasn't that high. However, it does have its place in the metagame. So how good was Miltank actually? Well, in OU terms, it started off as a key Pokemon in the main tier, then disappeared from use for the rest of time. In lower tier terms, it kept dropping lower and lower, but always found a niche somewhere. Its issue is that it's rather passive, and if it tried to go on the offensive, not only does it lose what it's mostly best at, but it's also usually outdone by similar Pokemon, such as its counterpart Tauros, and has to scrape for minor advantages that are more situationally useful, which is why it isn't seen as much. That said, Tank lives up to its name, because defensively, it is one tough cow to cook.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and thank you so much to PokeAim for appearing in this video. If you enjoyed him in here, go check out his channel for some of the best competitive Pokemon content out there. And as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Miltank? How would you change it? Would you want to make it OU again? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. And of course, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.